Beatified Pope. The Holy Father praises how a predecessor's blessedness radiated in his smile. New Prime Minister. Britain's Queen asks Boris Johnson's successor to form a government. Abortion facts. How a group of pro-life doctors is challenging media misinformation. And missionary of charity. A beloved saint is remembered on her feast day, marking a special anniversary. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, September 6th, 2022. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. The Catholic Church has a new blessed as Pope Francis presides over the beatification of John Paul I.
Proviamo a rispondere a questi interrogativi.
And his homily Sunday in St. Peter's Square, the Holy Father called John Paul I a model for the faithful because he was always resisted the temptation to put himself first and instead focused on others. John Paul I was often called the Smiling Pope. He died in 1978 after reigning for just 33 days. EWTN Newsroom correspondent Colm Flynn joins us now. Colm, great to see you. Can you tell us more about this beatification and what Pope Francis had to say?
I sure can, and good evening, Tracy, from Rome. Well, 25,000 people were here in St. Peter's Square at the Vatican on Sunday as Pope Francis led the celebrations in the rain for the beatification of Pope John Paul I. This is the final step towards sainthood. Pope Francis also announced that August the 26th would now be celebrated every year around the world in memory of that day, August the 26th in 1978, when he was elected as Pope. Pope John Paul I was from Italy and is famous for, among many other things, like being known as the Smiling Pope, as having one of the shortest reigns in papal history. He died after only 33 days as head of the Catholic Church, which led to much speculation around the circumstances of his death. He has now been declared blessed by the Catholic Church, and in his homily at the weekend, Pope Francis said that Pope John Paul I lived, quote, in the joy of the gospel without compromise, loving to the very end. He went on to talk about how Pope John Paul I was a truly selfless disciple, always putting others ahead of himself, and that he had a true gift of being able to convey the goodness of the Lord. The Pope led these celebrations along with 500 other co-celebrants, and many cardinals were in attendance, including, Tracy, Cardinal Angelo Becciu, whose trial for financial embezzlement that continues here at the Vatican.
And Colm, what about the cause of beatification? Can you tell us more about that?
Well, Tracy, of course, the cause to have someone declared a saint in the Catholic Church is a long and laborious process. And remember, he's not there yet, but he is just one step away with this beatification. The cause started back in 2003 by his diocese of Belluno-Feltri. This is where Pope John Paul I was born. A miracle was then recognised and approved in 2021. This is what they believe was the healing of a young Argentinian girl who had a brain disease and has since recovered. Now, to become a saint, Tracy, typically the normal process means that they will have to identify and validate a second miracle.
And Colm, before I let you go, can you tell us about the relic of John Paul I that's now possible to venerate?
I can indeed, Tracy. Well, before he was Pope John Paul I, the Smiling Pope, his name was Albino Luciani, and he was a bishop here in Italy. And as bishop, he had chosen for his motto the word humilitas, which means humility. And the relic that was put on the altar on display here on Sunday was a signature and some notes of his on a sheet of paper dating all the way back to 1956. Tracy?
All right. Well, Colm, thank you so much for that report. We appreciate it. Colm Flynn, EWTN Newsroom correspondent. Great to be with you. Pope Francis is calling sexual abuse in the church, quote, a monstrosity for which there is zero tolerance.
¿No será que el celibato, pero nada el celibato?
The Pope added that priestly celibacy did not cause sexual abuse separately. The Holy Father promised a pope would attend World Youth Day next August in Portugal. He joked, if it's not him, it might possibly be a new pope who could take the name John the 24th. Pope Francis made his remarks recently during a just televised interview with CNN Portugal. Pope Francis visits Kazakhstan next week, and the president of China is expected to be in the country as well, and that has some wondering if the two will meet. The visit comes as the Holy See and the communist country are negotiating over the renewal of a Vatican-China deal over the appointment of bishops. Meantime, in Washington, President Joe Biden takes another swipe at MAGA Republicans. The White House is trying to motivate voters to keep Democrats in power in D.C. with Election Day coming up on November 8th. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, exactly 9 weeks from today, voters head to the polls as President Joe Biden continues to double down on going after his political opponents. Meanwhile, at the same time, his administration defends one of its most controversial decisions. Hi, Owen Jensen, EWTN.
On the White House North Lawn today, I questioned Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra about a contentious topic.
You do believe Catholic hospitals and Catholic doctors should be forced to perform abortions or transgender surgeries against their conscience?
So what we do is we make sure that any medical center is able to provide the life-saving care that people need, the health care that they under law are required to provide. We'll continue to make sure that every provider, hospital, healthcare center, continues to provide every American with the care that they're entitled to under the law.
Also today, President Joe Biden gathers members of his cabinet for a meeting at the White House.
So today, I've assembled the cabinet to lay out in detail how we're going to implement each of these laws that we work so hard to get passed.
While yesterday in Milwaukee,
I want to be very clear up front. Not every Republican is a MAGA Republican, but the extreme MAGA Republicans in Congress have chosen to go backwards, full of anger, violence, hate, and division.
Over the weekend, former President Donald Trump pushing back.
Republicans in the MAGA movement are not the ones trying to undermine our democracy. We are the ones trying to save our democracy. Very simple.
Meanwhile, the COVID-19 response team says the country has reached what it calls a major milestone.
The FDA authorized and the CDC recommended new updated COVID-19 vaccines for all Americans 12 and above. This makes us, the United States, the first nation with new vaccines that match the version of the Omicron variant that is currently dominant.
Now back to the HHS Secretary. A federal appellate court ruled against the feds, saying they could not force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions and gender transitions. The legal group Beckett called the ruling a major victory for conscience rights. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Half Congress returns to Washington this week with the Senate in session. The House won't be back until next Tuesday. That said, as the November midterms close in, lawmakers are set to have a busy couple of weeks ahead. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales runs down the agenda. Eric.
Well, good evening to you, Tracy. You know, as Owen mentioned, we are only 9 weeks away until the midterm elections, a day when Americans will head to the polls to decide who will take control of the House and the Senate. Democrats do have several bills that they want to bring across the finish line before that happens. Meanwhile, Republicans tell me that what they're most concerned about is more out-of-control spending. With the threat of losing both the House and the Senate come November, Democrats are rushing to get several major party line bills passed, including a continuing resolution to keep the government funded. The current one is set to expire September 30th. I'm being told Democrats may try to attach the Marriage Equality Act to the CR, which they say would make it the law of the land to protect same-sex couples if the Supreme Court should ever overturn its decision. Plus, some Democrats also want to spend some $47 billion more for Ukraine relief, COVID preparedness, and monkeypox vaccine research. Senate Minority Whip John Thune tells me he expects Democrats to make an all-out push to pass bills at taxpayers' expense.
Until the clock strikes midnight on September 30th, I think we have to assume the Democrats are going to try and grow government, expand government, raise taxes, and put in place a bunch of whole new programs.
Democrats say they are optimistic that they can get the House-passed Marriage Equality Act through the Senate. 47 Republicans voted for it in the House. Some GOP senators say that they haven't made up their minds just yet.
Right now, there is no enforceable federal law that governs marriage between a man and a woman. So I don't know why we need to do anything special between a man and a woman and a woman. Right now, the law of the land is that gay marriages are legal.
With regards to the continued resolution, Democrats are hoping to extend it until sometime in mid-December. Now, on an unrelated note, it's been reported that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi wants President Biden to actually nominate her as ambassador to Italy. I did get in touch with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office. I spoke with Drew Hamill, who is the chief of staff of Nancy Pelosi. He wrote me, quote, "The speaker has no interest in this position and has not discussed it with anyone in the White House." He calls the reports utter nonsense. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, Britain now has a new prime minister as Liz Truss took office today. Earlier, during a ceremony at a castle in Scotland, Queen Elizabeth II greeted the 47-year-old former foreign secretary. The Queen asked the new Conservative prime minister to form a government to succeed Boris Johnson. The presidents of Israel and Germany, together with their wives, visited the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin today. They remembered the estimated 6 million European Jews who were killed under the rule of Nazi Germany. The leaders were also scheduled to visit a former concentration camp before meeting with Holocaust survivors. Our Russian President Vladimir Putin attended joint military exercises in his country's Far East today. The multi-force war games began last Thursday near the port of Vladivostok on Russia's Pacific coast. The exercises show growing ties between the militaries of Russia and China. They also tout Moscow's own capacity while conducting an offensive in Ukraine. Well, authorities in Mexico are still searching for a drug lord believed responsible for killing 2 priests and a tour guide in a northern mountain village last June.
Que con 1,000 elementos del ejército, con 200 elementos de la Guardia Nacional.
An advisor to the Jesuits in Mexico says that he cannot believe 1,200 soldiers have been unable to track down the suspect who is known as the Crooked One. The order remains committed to serving the remote community despite the threat to personal safety. Coming up, a legal victory for former President Donald Trump amid the FBI raid at his Florida home. And a controversial rule is proposed for veterans around the country. The Department of Veterans Affairs says it will provide abortions to some vets, even in states where abortion is banned. The Biden administration submitted a new rule allowing the VA healthcare system to provide abortions when the mother's life is at risk or in cases of rape or incest. Once published in the Federal Register, the policy will go into effect immediately while being open for public comment for 30 days. A judge has granted a request by former President Donald Trump regarding an independent review of the documents that the FBI took from his Florida home last month. Yesterday, the judge granted the request for a special master despite strong objections from the Justice Department. The independent review will include a focus on any documents that may be protected by attorney-client privilege. And joining us now is Amber Athey, Washington editor for The Spectator. Amber, welcome back. Good to see you. Let's talk about the decision to allow a special master to review those documents. How significant is that, and why did the Department of Justice object? What was the reasoning there?
Sure. So this is highly unusual and no doubt a huge victory for former President Donald Trump. He has, of course, objected to the entire search, claiming that he was cooperating with the Department of Justice on the return of potentially classified documents or documents that would otherwise be held as presidential records by the National Archives, and claims that the search warrant was executed unjustly and that most of the documents that the Department of Justice was actually looking at were already declassified by him while he was already in office. But the Department of Justice is objecting to the appointment of a special master because they want want to be able to get in immediately and start reviewing the documents themselves. And this is going to delay that process because this special master gets to actually go in and look at which documents might be covered under attorney-client privilege. President Trump is also asking for them to sort out documents that might be subject to executive privilege. And so they're going to filter out quite a bit of materials before the DOJ even gets to look at them.
Amber, what comes next in this case? I mean, is there any sort of, timetable as far as the special master's review?
It's not clear exactly how long the review will take, and the Department of Justice still has the opportunity to appeal this decision. So this could be held up in court for even longer, which would delay the process even further. So we're possibly looking at weeks, if not months, from the time the DOJ first seized these documents from Mar-a-Lago before we actually have a good idea of what's in these boxes that they took outside of the selective leaks that have gone out to the media.
Something else I want to get your take on. Over the weekend, Chicago's Mayor Lori Lightfoot criticized Texas Governor Greg Abbott, essentially saying busing migrants to her city and others goes against the teachings of Christianity. Help us unpack that. And why do you think she chose to use religion to kind of hit back at Governor Abbott?
Yeah, it's really interesting that I think the elected officials who least follow Christian principles or don't even consider themselves Christians are often the ones who try to use religion as a bit of emotional blackmail against people whose politics they don't like, in particular against conservatives and Republicans. And when you look at the response to Governor Abbott sending illegal immigrants to elsewhere in the country, it's quite interesting that liberals and Democrats who denied that there was a crisis at the southern border are now proclaiming that it is a crisis when these people show up in their districts or in their states. Mayor Eric Adams in New York City is a great example, who received just about 50 migrants recently and claimed that New York needed a boatload of federal money to be able to house them, even as New York City already has about 1 million plus illegal immigrants within its borders. So they are pushing back on Greg Abbott out of political expediency and not out of any fact-based analysis of the situation.
We only have about a minute or so left, but I quickly want to talk about some big news across the pond. As reported earlier, the United Kingdom has a new prime minister now. What can you tell us about Liz Truss and also those pressing issues that she's going to have to tackle now?
Yeah, so Liz Truss has had a lot of comparisons to Margaret Thatcher. I'm not sure how accurate those are. She is a free market liberal, but she's also been criticized of waffling, particularly on the Brexit issue. She was initially for remaining and then was for Brexit. But her big issue is going to be helping Europe through the energy crisis. So conservatives might be happy that they finally got over their weeks of chirping at each other and getting someone in position. But it's time to immediately get to work for them to help the UK get over the high energy prices and the rising cost of living.
Okay, we're going to leave it right there. Amber, thank you so much. We appreciate your insights, as always.
Thank you.
Up next, a new campaign to stop misinformation regarding the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Plus, remembering Mother Teresa on a significant anniversary. A group of pro-life doctors has launched a new campaign to combat media misinformation following the overturning of Roe versus Wade. The American Association of Pro-Life Obstetricians and Gynecologists is providing information and tools to nearly 7,000 medical professionals. The effort includes a detailed myth versus fact format where claims made in the media are countered by evidence-based peer-reviewed rebuttals. We go now to the group CEO, Donna Harrison, a board-certified OBGYN. Dr. Harrison, great to see you. First off, why did you start this initiative, that is, and how are you getting that information into the hands of medical professionals?
Well, we started the initiative because we saw that the information being put out by major media was scaring women and scaring them into not seeking needed medical care. And we are all about the best medical care for women. So it's important that women be equipped with accurate information and not scare techniques. And thank you for bringing me on the show. appreciate it, Tracy.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. It's such great information. Can you give us some specific examples of media misinformation, and then also how you're able to counter that with fact-based rebuttals?
Well, one piece of information is that abortion, elective abortion, is not the same as miscarriage treatment. So despite people saying, oh, I couldn't be treated for my miscarriage or my ectopic pregnancy, that's simply not true. Abortion, elective abortion, the purpose is to produce a dead offspring, whereas the purpose of miscarriage care or ectopic pregnancy treatment, in the case of ectopic, it's to save a woman's life, and in a miscarriage, the baby's already died. So there are no laws anywhere in the country that prevent ectopic treatment or miscarriage treatment. And there's no laws anywhere in the country that prevent a woman who's in a life-threatening situation from being separated from her baby at any gestational age, even if the baby can't survive outside. That's just the facts. That's just the laws in all the country, in the entire country. So we're encouraging women to seek care if they have ectopic pregnancy or miscarriages. They should be entitled to the same kind of care that they had before the Dobbs decision, because Dobbs only affects elective abortion. That is, ending the baby's life for no medical reason.
Yeah, and I know your initiative, it's aimed at medical professionals, but I'm curious, what about the general public? I mean, could it also help to educate them?
Well, I think it's important that medical professionals speak out about what they know is true. You know, somewhere between 85 and 93% of OB-GYNs do not do abortions, so they can be educating their patients about what real medical care is. It doesn't change their practice at all. So the only practices that change when elective abortion is restricted are those doctors who have been doing abortions, elective abortions, and not the 85 to 93% of doctors who have always treated both patients, both the pregnant mom and her preborn child. So we're encouraging our doctors and equipping our doctors to be able to speak out to their patients. And yes, the general public should know that there is no reason why they shouldn't be able to get miscarriage care and ectopic care.
And I'm wondering, you know, how important do you think it is to really get this information and get the truth out there?
Well, I think it's very important because women are handicapped when they don't know the truth. And misinformation breeds fear. And one thing that women need is accurate information so that they can take care of themselves in the right way, especially when it comes to if they have an ectopic pregnancy or if they have a miscarriage. And this is really especially true now with another piece of misinformation which has been circulating, which is somehow chemical abortion being called safe. It's not safe. Chemical abortion is very dangerous. And to do chemical abortion without ever seeing a physician or knowing where your baby is at, like an ectopic, or how far along you are, is very dangerous, because the further you are in pregnancy when you have that chemical abortion, the greater your risk that you will hemorrhage, and severely hemorrhage. So, for instance, if you're only about 7 weeks pregnant, you may have about a 1 out of 20 chance of having to go to the emergency room to complete that abortion. But if you are at just a little bit later, 13 weeks, you've got a 1 out of 3 chance that you are going to hemorrhage, major hemorrhage, and have to have surgery to complete that abortion. So it's this kind of misinformation, not only about what kind of care is available to women, but also misinformation about how dangerous chemical abortion is. It's a very dangerous thing, and women must know that information before they make that decision to do chemical abortion.
Oh, Dr. Harrison, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, Tracy.
And finally tonight, the church remembered St. Mother Teresa yesterday on her feast day and an important anniversary.
Let us pray. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace.
Yesterday marked the 25th anniversary of the saint's death. A Nobel Prize-winning nun who was born in Albania and spent the majority of her life working in the slums of India died in 1997. She was canonized by Pope Francis in 2016. And to read more about the life of St. Mother Teresa, including 25 quotes on living life beautifully, visit our partners at CatholicNewsAgency.com. And we thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.